about 7 habits of highly effective people. And so this is such a great topic. It really talks about our paradigms and how we interact with others and the way that we view ourselves and others and how we can really be highly effective. So the really keys for success in any walk of life, it really helps you to integrate the different responsibilities and the way that you act and react within your personal and professional life. And this book is really filled with different types of practical wisdom, really allowing you to kind of take control of the way that you work with others. So when we talk about habits, what is a habit? A habit really is the intersection of knowledge, skills, and desires, right? So, and then paradigm. A paradigm is an assumption, a perception, or a frame of reference. So when I speak about paradigm today, it really is about, what side of your brain are you operating out of, or what assumptions are you operating out of? Maturity, it really consists of 3 phases: dependence, independence, and interdependence. So dependence, depending on others; independence being relying on oneself; and interdependence, working with others. Effectiveness, it lies in what is called the P and PC balance. So more of that personal connectiveness and working with each other. All right, so here's what the 7 habits are. So being proactive, beginning with the end in mind, putting first things first, thinking win-win, seeking first to understand, then to be understood, to synergize, and to sharpen the saw. So the 7 habits really move us progressively on like a maturity continuum from dependence to independence to interdependence. So to look at this might be kind of confusing. So it starts at the top, or at the bottom, I'm sorry. So dependence, so being proactive, so thinking ahead of time. So really these are the private victories for us. And then beginning with the end in mind and putting first things first, now you're moving into the independence. And then we're moving more into the public victory, thinking win-win. So when we go into situations, how do we think about situations, and are we only going to win? Are they going to win? Or is it a win-lose? Then moving into seek to understand before being understood, synergizing, so really working together, and then sharpening the saw. Okay, so the first one is in the dependence category, and so being proactive. So when we think about being proactive, we really need to think about our language. So reactive language in situations might be something like, well, there's nothing I can do about it, so why should I even try? Well, I've got a C in my class, so why should I even try? The instructor hates me. Or you can move more into that proactive. Well, let me look at an alternative. Maybe there's a different approach that I could take. I know that I can control my own feelings in this, versus saying, you know what, God, that instructor just makes me so mad all the time. So how can you control your own feelings? Okay, instead of saying he makes me so mad, I wonder why. I feel this way about this instructor. Or, you know what, my different approach might be like, I think I'm going to email him this time versus just getting frustrated with him or her. Okay, so really thinking about, why do we react in the way that we're reacting? and being proactive in our language. You ever know somebody around you that you would just really consider a negative Nancy? And so it drives you crazy because all they ever do is say something negative. And like, I had a friend in college that, oh, what do you have on your schedule today? And instead of them just saying, oh, I've got this and this, it'd be like, what don't I have on my schedule today? Or what don't I have to do? So very reactive language all the time. And so really thinking about, am I that person that's using that reactive language, and how can I shift that to saying, let me think about that, and how can I approach my own feelings in a different way?
So probably a good thing to note here, I kind of just noticed this for the proactive language, it says a lot of I and let's, whereas the reactive just puts it on someone else.
Yeah.
So it says like he, she, they.
Yeah, that blame versus ownership. Sure.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
That's a great point, Samantha.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. So with being proactive rather than reactive, meaning controlling the moment rather than letting the moment control you, right? So a lot of times when things are going on around us, we feel like it kind of takes us over. And so shifting that paradigm, remember those assumptions, and saying, you know what, I've got this. I am in control here. I will not let this situation control me. Take action before the problem even arises, So preventing avoidable, preventable road bumps. So we know that by being on the phone while you're driving, it is a danger and could possibly cause you to get into an accident. So the preventative is to not be on your phone, right? And to pay attention to the road. That's a preventable road bump, right? Or, okay, so that I know that this professor has been a very tough professor in the past based on what my friends have said. I'm going to choose at the beginning to communicate effectively with this instructor to make sure I understand his or her expectations going into this course to help set me up for success versus saying, ugh, I'm dreading this course. There's no way I'm going to be able to get through it. I'm just going to set myself up for success by really trying to communicate as much as possible with this instructor. Anybody else have any other examples that you want to give as it relates to this one? Okay. So this next one is really beginning with the end in mind. So when I say begin with the end in mind, what do you think that means?
Maybe have a goal in mind before you talk about it, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. So personal leadership, having a goal, always set a goal in mind. So, okay, so I know this is going to be a hard course. My goal is to get a B in this course, and to get a B in this course, I'm going to have to do X, Y, and Z, right? So you must remember that the things that you want to achieve so that you can do a task at your best, right? So I know that to be able to get a B in this course, I'm going to have to do X, Y, and Z. And one of those is going to have to be, I'm going to have to study this many hours a week, or I'm going to have to contact a tutor each week to be able to get the appropriate amount of support that I need, because this is a tough topic for me that I often struggle with, right? So remembering, I have the strength, the patience, and the passion to turn my dreams into my future reality. So when I think about conflict as it relates to beginning with the end in mind, so if I were to think about my role, is that my role is to meet students' needs as it relates to their resumes and them hopefully turning the resumes into something positive to achieve a job or employability skills. And if I'm not agreeing with a coworker, I always try to begin with that end in mind. Is what I'm doing within my office beginning with the end? Is it meeting students' needs? Is it meeting what we said that our goals are within our department? You know, so in your relationships, is what's happening right now meeting the goals what you had hoped to achieve within your relationships, within the mission or the values that you hope to achieve? Okay. Motivation, patience, and discipline are the keys to unlocking your goals. Stay positive and never give it up. So now we're adding on that the first habit, right? So we have to stay positive. We have to shift that language to, ugh, it never is going to work out for me anyways, right? So now we've got the goal and we've got shifting that language to being more positive.
Tara,
Yeah,
I want to interject something from my own experience here real quick, if
Please.
you don't mind. Hi, everybody. I'm a career coach as well. Tara and I work together. But it really makes me think about what I did at home when I was pulling up old carpet. I was hoping to refinish my original wood floor in my house. Okay. So I took 3 days off work to paint my living room, my dining room, and then I decided to tear up this old carpet. Well, I had the end in mind, which was I'm going to have this wood floor that's going to be, beautiful. I can sand it. I can make it look so nice. And that's what kept me going with the hard work of actually, tearing up this carpet, hauling it out to the trash. And then I had to use like a special tool to lift up the particle board from the wood floor. I mean, it was lots of nails and everything, but because I had that end in mind, it made the difficulty of the work almost enjoyable because I knew what the end would look like, right? And I feel like that really kind of applies to what you're talking about, Tara, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're putting it in a practical sense of understanding that this hard work that I had to do, this gross work of pulling up old carpet that sometimes is super yucky, right?
Right.
And you don't want to do that task. We really just want to jump right to the beautiful floors, right?
Right.
But you had to go through that nitty gritty of cutting the carpet, pulling it up, pulling up those nails. You have to sand the floor. All these steps to get to this beautiful floor that you're hoping to get to, and just keeping that end in mind in sight so that you stay motivated to get there, right?
Exactly. Totally true. Yes.
Yep, absolutely. So that motivation, that patience, and discipline.
Yeah.
Right. So staying positive and never giving up. Like when you're pulling the 10,000th nail out of the floor, sometimes that's hard to do, but just again saying, okay, I'm doing this because I want beautiful floors. Right.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Great example. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So now as we're still in that dependence phase, we're now into the put first things first. So how many of you on here write down your tasks each week or make a list of things that you would like to get accomplished? Joyce gave me a thumbs up. You're welcome to give me a thumbs up in the chat or raise your hand or just shout it out at me. Thank you, Timothy. You got a thumbs up from Timothy too. He writes down his tasks. Joe
Kai
also.
said, as I say, Kai Quinn says, I do.
Perfect. So when we think about prioritizing our tasks, okay, so each week I can think about 100, 500 different tasks that have to be accomplished, right? And so again, back to that person that I said in college that kept saying, well, what don't I have to do this week? So how do we prioritize our tasks? Really, we need to think about the most important tasks first what really has the largest impact on us and where do we need to put it? So when I think about the things that kind of get in my way of being the most effective, oftentimes I put the little menial tasks first at times because I know I can get them done quickly, but they often take up space of things that are important to me. And sometimes they affect relationships that and get in the way of important things that I really should have been doing, like spending time with my family. And so then that impacts relationships. And so I really want you to think about what are the things that are most important that really should be done first? And why should they be done first? And what are things that, you know what, it's okay to set this aside for today. It's not going to hurt for this to be put aside till another day. And so what are the things that are important to do versus the things that we want to do? And how do you prioritize those, right? So that principle of personal management. So really the key is not to prioritize what's on your schedule, but to schedule your priorities. So what are your priorities? How do you schedule them? Effective people are not problem-minded, they are opportunity-minded. So what are the opportunities and how do I put them in a way in my life that opens up other doors or gives us possibilities? Okay, that one's a hard one. That's a hard one. You know, I think that, you know, some of us are checkbox tickers, right? That we feel accomplished when we can check off those lists. It's actually proven that by making lists and having them by you and checking them off, like it helps you to feel more effective, more accomplished, but really thinking about schedule those priorities. When am I going to do it? Why am I doing this? And how will I make sure that they really are a priority versus just a task?
And Tara,
Yeah.
this makes me really think about you actually. So you have a priority that is working out, right? You like
Yes.
to work out, you love to be active. Well, you schedule that into your life and you make sure it happens. Whereas, you know, I like to work out, I like to walk, but I kind of prioritize what's on my schedule rather than scheduling my priorities. So
Yeah.
I think that's a really good example of how that can work. And it's good for you, you know?
Yeah. So I spend a lot of time thinking about my health. And one of those is working out. I typically work out twice a day. And so I have to schedule that to make sure that it's not interfering with my family and that it also doesn't interfere with my work. So, you know, I have to be very careful in particular about that. But a lot of times I include it with my family, you know, are we hiking? Are we biking? Are we doing different things? And so it's a big priority in our house. And so it is put first things first, you know, so looking at it as in, oh, it's not just one more thing. This is something that's important to us. So we will figure out how to do it. Our end in mind is to stay healthy for our children and for our longevity. And then so we put first things first. That's one of our first things because it's a value to us. Yep, absolutely. So now we're building upon it, right? So now can you kind of see how we're kind of building this web? Start off in the middle and now we're building kind of this web that keeps getting bigger and bigger and interconnected. Okay, I love this matrix. It's somewhat kind of hard to understand at first, but I'll try to explain it as best I can. So here's a time management matrix. And so across the top, we have the two categories of urgent and not urgent. And down the side, we have important and not important. So quadrant 1 is it's important and it's urgent. So you have to take care of it today. It must be taken care of today. So one of mine today was my washer broke down this morning and my washer would not drain. And so I had water flooding all over my, all over my laundry room because and my wet clothes were locked in the washer. So it was urgent and it was important, right? But it was only so much important that I just needed to get the clothes out of the washer and get the water off the floor. And then I could let it go. Then it moved into urgent and not important. It moved into quadrant 3 because it's something I can take care of later. I can do it later tonight. So that one shifted for me, but it's the things that creep up on you. It's the things that just like jump out at you and kind of smack you in the face, you know, like your flat tire or your car breaks down. It's unavoidable. It's a task that is due today. It's an assignment that's due today. It's urgent and needs done now. Quadrant 2, it's important, but it's not urgent. It's tasks, it's planning and goal setting. Tasks that are maybe due next week that, okay, I might work on them some today, some tomorrow. Exercise and relaxation. It's not urgent, but it's important. Like I said, relationships, they're important and we work on them daily. It's balance and high performance in that one. Okay, the urgent, but it's not important. Unimportant phone calls, interruptions, text messages, other people's issues. So how often do you have other people texting you and saying, oh, you'll never believe what happened to me? Or other things that just kind of pop up that, or overcommitted to activities. Remember, we just talked about putting first things first. Are you overcommitted to activities that really you shouldn't be? And, you know, I had somebody ask me the other day if I would be a nutrition coach. And I said no, because at this point in my life, I can't add something else. It's not that I don't want to help anybody. I would love to talk to anybody that needs my help, but to dedicate time to other people and say, I'm going to make a true commitment to this, I would be setting myself up for failure. And so don't overcommit yourself to things that you feel like you're not going to be able to commit yourself to. Don't be a yes man. It is okay to say no and putting boundaries. So don't disappoint yourself before disappointing others. I didn't want to set myself up to fail. I don't want to disappoint other people either. So then we have the quadrant 4. So I sit in quadrant 4 oftentimes when I'm just watching too much television and I really just need to shut it off. This is my mindless when I don't want to deal with the rest of the world or endless phone calls or excessive computer, Facebook, text. It's the time waster. So that's the slacker. It's not urgent. It's not important. It's just the waste of time. So what examples do you guys have of any of the quadrants that you identify with?
Well, I'll go ahead and start the conversation. Maybe maybe the rest would want to join in, but I do go to quadrant 4 probably in the evenings more than any time. So I kind of feel like it's due me, like I can actually waste some time because I've devoted a lot of time to work during the day. But even, you know, even though I feel like I can take advantage of that time and just waste it, it's still wasted, right? So yeah, I have to kind of rethink that. I spend a lot of time on my phone or watching TV.
Easy to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, for like schoolwork, I'm usually in quadrant 2, like when I have school, like virtual Zoom meeting and tasks to do. But other than that, I'm unfortunately in quadrant 4. I'm probably in quadrant 4 more than I should be. But I mean, so.
And so Tara, how does that work?
So Samantha, my question for you. So with your homework, you said you're often in quadrant 2, right? So are you a procrastinator to where sometimes it ends up in quadrant 1, or are you a pretty good planner?
I'm not usually a procrastinator. I usually like to plan. I mean, when it's something like I I really don't want to do, then yeah, I'll procrastinate. But
Yeah.
other than that, I'm a planner.
Yeah. Yeah. So the consequence of not remaining in quadrant 2 and planning and really working out your homework schedule and looking at it as in quadrant 2 is that you end up in quadrant 1. You end up with burnout and high stress, right? So that's, I waited and waited and waited to do this project that I knew that was due at the end of the month. And I just didn't give it the importance that it needed. And so now I'm frustrated and super stressed out about it. And I ended up putting myself in quadrant 1 and filling my life with unneeded stress, right? And not having balance. Yeah.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
So obviously we cannot all be in just one quadrant at all times.
Nope.
So is there a balance here that's advisable?
Yeah. So, okay. So if you recognize, Joyce, that, all right, maybe I'm spending too much time in quadrant 4, right?
Mhm.
What's the unintentional what's the consequence of spending too much time in quadrant 4? What happens to your relationships? What happens to the things around you?
Right.
So
I get
yeah,
it.
so the consequence is that it could be damaging to relationships because you didn't put your phone down, right? It could
Mhm.
be damaging to your house because you didn't pay enough attention to things that needed to be taken care of in your house.
Right.
So you're going to have to say to yourself, hey, nope, I don't want to live my life in quadrant 4.
Right.
I'm going to pull myself out of that and put myself into quadrant 2, right?
Right.
Or if I'm stuck in quadrant 3 and I'm telling yes to everybody, and now I'm
Mhm.
starting to disappoint myself or disappoint others, now I'm going to have to set boundaries, right?
Mhm.
And I'm going to say, you know what, this week, I just don't have time for that. I'm really sorry, but I'm going to have to turn that invitation down because I need to do this,
Right.
you know? So,
Mhm.
or with procrastinating, you know what, I realize I'm doing that too much. I'm going to plan out this week. So you can easily pull yourself out of each quadrant, understanding what each of the consequences is as you reside in that quadrant.
Yeah, that's great.
Right?
That's a good way to explain it.
Yeah.
Timothy says, the class student success I took helped me tremendously getting better organized.
Good.
So, that's good.
Yeah, and I think that, again, the intentions of that class really are to help understand what will this work look like and how can you really have balance and high performance, right? That's the end in mind for that class for sure.
Right.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, so now we're moving into the interdependence, thinking win-win. So this is really being a team player, and this is choosing an attitude of win-win when a person chooses the choice that would benefit themselves as well as other people. A win-win solution, all parties feel good about the decision and feel committed to the action plan. So again, when you go back to the end in mind, so when you go back to my goal is, or our end in mind is this, and you try to seek win-win, then most of the time you feel good about what the resolution is. So sometimes you'll have situations where it feels like when you're being attacked. So like I think about the drama triangle, right? So if I go to attack Joyce because I'm mad at something that she did, or I go to complain about Joyce because I'm super frustrated about the way that she approached something, I'm really seeking a win-lose situation because I win because I'm complaining about Joyce. Joyce loses because her reputation is on the line, right? So, but if I approach Joyce and I say, Joyce, I wonder about how you came to a decision about this situation. Can you help me understand? So I'm approaching her out of a paradigm of curiosity and understanding. And so I really am just trying to understand her. And so really that opens it up so Joyce feels comfortable for discussing her point of view. And I'm not attacking her. I could say, Joyce, I really didn't like the way that you approached that situation. Your idea was crud. So now I'm attacking her. So now I'm back in win-lose because I win because I make her feel like crud, and I win because I made her feel like crud, So really trying to, or, you can approach it lose-win, unfortunately, and just giving in and saying, well, I guess Joyce just always gets what she wants. So I just won't even approach it because nothing's ever going to come of it. That's a lose-win situation. Joyce won because I didn't approach the situation. So really, let's go back to what's the end in mind. The end in mind was to help our students. So approaching Joyce, help me understand your thinking in that situation. Can we talk about this to really think through how we're helping the students in this situation? So really feeling committed to a plan of action and having all parties feel good about it. When you approach conflict out of curiosity, help me understand, or can we talk about this? Can you help me understand your line of thinking or what was going on in this situation? It's approaching it out of curiosity and really hoping to come up with compromise. I was struggling with a coworker not that long ago, and yes, my feelings were heightened because I didn't like the way that this employee was doing her work, but I couldn't approach it that way because I knew that if I did, then immediately that would be seeking a win-lose situation. And that wasn't fair to that employee because I didn't know their paradigm. All I knew was my paradigm. So I needed to better understand theirs so that we could talk about it to come up with a win-win situation. This one is hard. Why is this one so hard? And it is because most of the time it's emotionally charged, right? When we enter into conflict, it's because our emotions are heightened. So we have to be really careful about pulling ourselves back, beginning with that end in mind, thinking win-win, being proactive in those regards. Okay. All right. So again, so this goes right into seeking to understand before you are understood. So it's really the principle of empathic communication. There's a difference between listening and just waiting to speak. So how many of you are guilty, and I'm raising my hand high, of how many of you are guilty of forming your words and not truly listening to the other person while they're speaking? You're sitting there forming your own sentence while they're speaking and not truly listening to them.
I catch myself doing that sometimes. And
Yeah.
I hate it.
It's hard because we feel like what we have to say is important, right? It is.
Right.
It is. But how do we stop? Listen with your ears, listen with your eyes, listen with your heart. So I like the analogy of microwave and crockpot thinkers. Microwave thinkers are the ones that always have something to say on their toes, right? Crockpot thinkers are the ones that need time to reflect. They are really good listeners. They're the ones that take everything in before they can respond, okay? I've had to teach myself to be a crockpot thinker because I always was the one that just shot off the hip. So being really careful to take that step back, taking the time to listen with your ears, your eyes, and your heart, okay? So what would happen if you were to go into a doctor's office, Timothy, and the doctor's office said, I'm going to put you on a blood pressure medication and you will take 3 pills a day for the next 6 months. And it was the first thing they said to you before you even opened your mouth. And then you said, okay, but I'm having heart palpitations. I can't catch my breath. I feel like I'm really jittery. Like, so he prescribed for you before he diagnosed you. A lot of times that's what we do with communication, right? Like we try to come up with our own sentences before we're even listening and diagnosing or hearing what the other person said. The diagnosis is, or the prescription is going to be wrong, right? So it might be just anxiety when he's trying to give you blood pressure and medication for your heart when he doesn't understand what's really going on with you. So it takes courage and consideration to step back and listen and to hear with our whole body and our whole heart. Okay, synergize. This one's hard. This one's really hard. Creative cooperation. It's teamwork. Because we have opinions is what makes this one so hard. Synergy, simply defined, means the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Two heads are better than one. So COVID has made this one super, super hard. So when we think about synergy over this last over a year, a lot of us have been in such isolation that creating that opportunity for teamwork and the opportunity for putting two heads together has been really hard. And so we have to be really creative about this and being able to come together to hear each other, and not just, we have all these different pieces of a puzzle that we're trying to smush together that don't really fit, right? So we have to be able to be creative about how do we bring all these pieces together, to look at them, to be able to challenge them, and to really work as a team. So synergy, I love it when it comes together, when the listening and meeting the end in mind and coming together as a team is pretty amazing. Okay, and then sharpen the saw. This is one that people neglect the most. It's the principle of balanced self-renewal, taking a break. To be effective, you must reset your mind and your body. Do things that you love that reset you. It is your personal PC. It's preserving and enhancing the greatest asset that you have. It's you. So either going out with friends, taking a bath, reading a book. What are your ways that you love to sharpen the saw?
I hope that, I hope everyone else would maybe chime in here, because I think it's important to learn from each other. Like what do you do to actually sharpen the saw? I would say, for me, I like to practice mindfulness, where I just stop thinking about the past, stop thinking about what's going to happen, and just focus on what I'm feeling right now. Like maybe go outside and just appreciate what I see, what I smell, the birds, focus more on what's happening right this moment.
Yeah.
And then Timothy just said spending time with my 5-year-old son. I think that's great.
Yeah, absolutely. So just that sheer joy of playing with your son, Timothy. Love it.
Yeah, that's good.
Anybody else?
I agree with Timothy that children are just so refreshing. Oh my gosh. It's like they love you unconditionally. They think you're funny. They think you're smart. It just makes you feel so good to be with children. He said, yes, made the world seem unimportant. So
yeah, absolutely. Well, I just got back from going on vacation with my family, and we went to the beach in Florida. We camp a lot in a camper, and I have never had so much fun and sharpening the saw with my family in my life. I every morning woke up and worked out with 4 other women and ran on the beach, and then spent the entire rest of my days just playing with my children. I don't sit still very well, and so playing frisbee in the ocean and throwing a ball back and forth and just jumping in the waves and giggling with my kids, and that was so refreshing for my soul and self renewal that it was amazing, so I'm going to give you guys some more examples of sharpening that saw of, that spiritual, mental, socio-emotional, and physical, so with that physical, that exercise, that nutrition and stress management. One of our girls here in the office, loves nutrition. And so for her, I feel like some of her sharpening the saw is really making a good meal. She loves to bake and bring healthy things in for us, and with her boyfriend. And Joyce, you said going outside and just being in nature and smelling and listening. Spiritual, studying, meditation, value clarification, mental, reading, visualizing, planning, writing, socio-emotional, being service oriented, giving of your time, or empathy, spending it with others that you love to talk to and support, synergizing, intrinsic security, so really think about what sharpens your own saw, what gives you that sense of self-renewal, and dive into it, make sure that is part of your end in mind, and giving yourself that space and that time to do it. Okay. So that which we persist in doing becomes easier, not that the nature of the task has changed, but our ability to do so has increased. By centering our lives on correct principles and creating a balanced focus between doing and our ability to do, we become empowered in the task of creating effective, useful, and peaceful lives for ourselves and for our posterity. So we've got, remember, being proactive, begin with the end in mind, put first things first, think when, seek first to understand, then to be understood, synergize, and sharpen the saw. All right, so what questions or comments do any of you have that I can answer or that we can reflect on?